For more than 50 years, Prairie Theatre Exchange has been a vital part of Winnipeg's cultural landscape, offering diverse and engaging theatre experiences. It has premiered numerous Canadian plays, supported emerging and established artists, and remained committed to fostering new voices in the industry. In October 2024, Anne Hodges stepped into the role of artistic director at Prairie Theatre Exchange, bringing decades of directing experience from Winnipeg and across Canada to one of the city's most beloved stages. Now she's unveiling her first curated season, a lineup of 5 Canadian plays that promise laughter, thought-provoking conversation, and a renewed sense of community in live theatre. From a riotous family farce to a world premiere tackling issues of art and identity, the 2025-26 season is filled with dynamic storytelling and fresh perspectives. Hodges herself will direct both the season opener and closer, setting the tone for a year of engaging and meaningful theatre. The 2025-26 Prairie Theatre Exchange season promises to be one that is going to be remarkable. And joining me here in the Classic 107 studio to talk about this upcoming season, I'm proud to welcome into our studio Anne Hodges. Hey, Anne, nice to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Okay, so this is your first season as artistic director. How does it feel to be curating the lineup for PTE? Does it feel like a new beginning, not only for you, but for PTE as well?
It really does. I mean, it's sort of like being allowed to be the cook in the kitchen, and I'm planning a nice meal for our subscribers and anyone who wants to participate. And so that's exciting, like thinking about what will go with what. And you're right, it is kind of a new beginning for PTE. Anytime there's a new artistic director, they get to kind of put their stamp on where they think PTE is going, and that's my opportunity now to do that.
Mm-hmm. What was your vision when selecting the plays for this season? Were there themes that you wanted to emphasize?
Not really themes. I mean, I joked with the board of directors that the theme was going to be good theater, and I guess that then begs the question of what makes good theater. And in my opinion, good theater is a really good story that's clearly told, that uses the sort of tools of theater. I mean, it's something that we want to see live with each other, and it's just very clear and engaging. I had the opportunity to work with the great British theater director Peter Brook once, and he used to say, you always want the audience to be in a position of what's going to happen next, and, you know, in a sense of anticipation. And that, for me, is what each of these stories does. There's a wide variety of genres, but ultimately they're going to be pulled in by the story and the characters, and have this great journey with the story and the characters, and then it'll be so exciting and clear that they'll be able to tell their friends about it the next day.
Fantastic. We here in radio have this thing called CanCon, which is Canadian content. Prairie Theatre Exchange has long championed Canadian playwrights. And this year, for 25-26, it's all Canadian. What was your thinking behind that?
Well, PTE does have this legacy of really being supportive of Canadian writers, and it really made its mark in the 70s and 80s of doing that primarily. And throughout the decades, there has been times, of course, when there's been great British plays or American plays that have also appeared on the season. But it just feels to me like I have over a 30-year history with the company as a freelance director. I was a student at the company. I did telemarketing. I sold subscriptions. And so for years, I feel like I've seen what seasons work and which plays are more successful and less successful, and which plays seem to be authentically PTE's voice. And so that's kind of where I was going. And it felt to me, I did want personally for my first season to be all Canadian, just because I feel like PTE plays a really important role in Canadian theatre in that way. Historically, we have this history of always doing 4 existing plays and then often one premiere. Not always, but often there's one premiere as well. And I am following that formula. It's so good in many ways. For one thing, by offering plays that have been produced elsewhere, first of all, there's a proven success. Right. So obviously we're choosing plays that have had success, that audiences have embraced, and that say something that are going to mean something to our Canadian audiences. from a sort of a playwright's point of view, it's really good for those Canadian playwrights from Ontario or BC or Curve Lake, like wherever they're coming from. They're getting a second and third production, which allows them to continue writing and to sort of continue making their craft. And then for Winnipeg audiences, it gives us a chance to see of what's really happening in Canadian theatre, and so we're getting the best of Canadian theatre in those selections. And then, of course, having a premiere as well means that we are supporting that first production of a play. In my opinion, the play needs to be ready. So we very carefully selected that play, and it's exciting. It makes sense in the season, and so we're giving that opportunity to a playwright as well.
Amazing. I want to turn to the season. Starting on October 15th, you're presenting Liars at a Funeral. This is a high-energy farce about a grandmother faking her own death to reunite her estranged family. When did you first see it, and what drew you to this play for a season opener?
Yeah, actually, I have never seen it, but I'm an expert in reading plays as part of my job. So as part of the search for this position, we have to applicants have to put together a sort of a proposed season, just so the board can sort of see how you're thinking. And so I read dozens of plays last summer during the application process, and I had heard a lot about this play because it had multiple productions. And it just seemed to be a riot, and also like high quality. I trusted the people who were writing it, or the woman who wrote it, and the people who were working on it. And so I wrote to the playwright and said, "Can you please send me your script?" So I read it last summer and literally laughed out loud. And I actually rarely, even with comedies, I rarely laugh out loud when I'm reading it because I just laugh quietly inside. But this one, it's hysterically funny. It also has sort of a little twist at the end that makes you sort of feel all the feels as well. And that to me is the magic formula of an ability to sort of make us laugh and relax and just have a great time. But there also is a little bit of substance as well.
Mm-hmm. It is a farce. You're the director. When I think of farce, the first thing that pops in my mind is Fawlty Towers, maybe Three's Company. I'm a child of the 80s, that whole thing. How do you approach directing a show like this and keep the laughs landing one right after another? Well,
casting is going to be very important. I always say you can't teach comedy. Like either an actor understands timing and the sort of stakes that are required in presenting a comedy. So of course in this one it's really high stakes because the grandmother is faking her funeral, so she keeps on having to hide, and other people are in on it or not in on it. Everyone has a lie or a secret that they're keeping. So very, very high stakes. But then I had conversations with Sophia, the playwright, and she's like, just keep the pace going. Like even when it gets more sort of deep later on in the play, just keep the pace going. And I can see on the page that's how it works. Like if you start to play, oh, this is a funny line, it's going to land really dead. So the actors have to be just really focused on what their intentions are and keeping that pace and lightness going.
And just keeping it moving ahead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that is Liars at a Funeral, and it's running from October 15th through to the 26th. The next play in the season is Serving Elizabeth, which starts on November 12th. The play moves between 1950s Kenya and modern-day London, and from what I understand, it really tells two stories, each having two vastly different viewpoints on the monarchy. It tackles history, politics, and pop culture. What excites you about this kind of storytelling?
I love this play. So I saw a really amazing production of it at the Stratford Festival a few years ago. And basically, it has these two timelines. They do intersect. So in the 1950s world, we are seeing Princess Elizabeth, who is staying at the Royal Lodge. And this is the Princess Elizabeth who became the queen during that visit. But it's primarily the story of this Kenyan cook who has been hired to cook in the Royal Lodge during this visit. And this woman is quite anti-monarchist for a lot of political reasons that are sort of revealed in the play. But basically you have this sort of premise in which this anti-monarchist cook is asked to serve Elizabeth. There's also the double entendre, of course, of Elizabeth is serving the people, so to speak. So that's the Kenyan sort of 1950s timeline. And then intersecting, we jump back and forth in time to 2015 London, in which this Canadian film student is apprenticing, or she's an intern on a streaming TV series that is about the royal family. It doesn't mention it by words in the play, but it is obviously The Crown.
Yeah.
And so while she's working on this TV series, she reads the script for the episode that was set in Kenya during Princess Elizabeth's visit there. And she begins to sort of go, wow, I bet there was other stories that were happening during that time period. And she begins to sort of question some of the writing and ends up talking to the writer. And it's very dramatic. It's really fresh. It's so smart, this play. So you're jumping back and forth and back and forth. And interestingly, the film intern, the young Canadian film intern who's in London, she loves like anything to do with princesses and the royal family and everything. But then she also sort of begins to put things into perspective. So Marcia has written an incredibly beautiful play. There are like the characters are fun to watch and very engaging to watch, and it really is something that just makes you think and makes you sort of see many sides of the questions of representation and who gets to tell what story.
Yeah. And to that end, there's that old adage, victors write the history. The play really does challenge how history is told and who gets to tell it. How do you think this theme connects with Canadian audiences today?
Well, it's so important, isn't it, that where like you say, the victors are not the only ones who are writing the story just because we happen to have the pens in our hands or whatever. So, and I mean, I think that sort of relates to many different types of storytelling, and so I just think it's just really important. And what I love about this play is that it invites us to examine this topic. It's not sort of hitting us over the head with one point of view or anything like that. It's really balanced, very challenging at times, but also sort of pointing out different points of view and why things are done in a certain way and why we should question other actions and that kind of thing. So that's just basically good, important for every theater company to do, not only theaters as well, but TV series, which is kind of what Marcia is saying, movies, of like making sure that we have many voices that are represented.
And just making sure that, making the point that history, it's not black and white. There's a lot of shades of gray. Exactly,
yeah. And that's what's so beautiful is that she begins to sort of, by the end, you're seeing history in a really different point of view, and it just sort of flips it on its head in a really great way. It's a very satisfying play to watch.
Absolutely. So that's Serving Elizabeth. It runs from November 12th through to the 23rd. Then you have the holiday shows. You're welcoming back the improv troupe Outside Joke for another holiday musical extravaganza. When you saw them this past year, they performed this past Christmas, what was your impression? I mean, you must have been impressed. You've invited them back, right?
Yeah. They've kind of become another PTE holiday tradition. So they started, I think, 3 years ago. I think this might be their third year. And this is a local improv group, but what they do that is exceptional is that they do long form improv. Yeah. So there's an intermission, it's like a full evening. And what's so incredible about watching them, and so of course they take suggestions from the audience of like settings and times and certain questions that the audience suggests. So every night is different, but this troupe understands structure so well and comedy so well, and so you're watching it and you realize like in the second act they're bringing back a theme that they had in the first act. What they last Christmas or during the holidays, one of their key members, Paul DeGurse, who is the music director, plays live piano, was out in Halifax doing another production. So he was unavailable. So this year, what we saw was just sort of rom-com. Next year, it will be rom-com with music. Yeah. So this is their other area of expertise, is that they actually invent songs while we're watching. And they're not sort of silly little ditties. These are complex with like bridges and quartets and, coming back to choruses and things like that. And that's all part of the excitement of watching this piece be created live. And it's the sort of show that many audiences come back 2 or 3 times because they see one version, and then the next night there'll be a different set of suggestions from an audience, and it will be a completely different rom-com. So it's really kind of addictive.
Yeah, I interviewed one of the actors for this last season, and she was talking about those callbacks, and it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, they are incredibly gifted. We are very lucky to have them in our community and super thrilled that they're back with us this season.
Something else that's happening this Christmas is that you're presenting a family show, really for all ages. Can you talk about the show Once Upon a Time? PTE's run it before, right?
Yes. So PTE has this long history since, I think, 1985 of doing Robert Munch during the holiday season. So there would be a very short show. It's about an hour long, and it includes 5 stories by Robert Munch. And this production is adapted by Debbie Patterson. So she's a local writer, performer, producer who has adapted many of these Munch stories. And this particular one is called Once Upon a Time. And it's sort of looking looks at this mad professor who has a time machine, and someone is brought from the past, and someone is brought from the future. And through the course of the story, of course, they tell 5 Robert Munch stories, including the very popular Paper Bag Princess. So it's a great event.
Lovely.
They were always supremely popular over the years. The last Munch was done right before the pandemic, so almost exactly 5 years ago. It had to, of course, shut down, but we're thrilled to be bringing it back. Audiences love these shows. In fact, a couple of our board members, when we presented the season, they put up their hands and said, I was a Munch kid. The reason I go to theater now is because I saw Munch when I was 5 years old. And for me, that's an important reason for us to be doing it, is, it exposes young people to not just a really great time with their families, but also it exposes them to live theater. And then, hopefully that becomes a lifetime habit.
A great way to spend some time with your kids over the holidays.
It's so fantastic. I took my niece and nephew when they were young, and it's just, they're kooky. PTE really is a specialist in producing Munch. Like, there's a lot of really great theater for young audiences in our town, with Manitoba Theater for Young People, of course, but our expertise lies in Munch, and there's just this kooky storytelling. We've got like fantastic props, like of course with Paper Bag Princess, there'll be the dragon and all those fun things. And it's really delightful for audiences.
The holiday shows sound like they're going to be just great. Then starting on January 21st, 2026, PTE is presenting Big Stuff, this play that blends comedy with heartfelt storytelling. What makes it a good fit for the PTE season?
Okay, so I love this play. So this play is a play that was presented last fall at Crow's Theatre, and the Globe and Mail review said, if there's any justice in this world, this play will like tour nationally, and so I basically picked up the phone or wrote an email immediately and contacted them and said, I want to know more about your play. So Matt Barron and Naomi Sneakus are these incredible comedians. They actually are a married couple who met during Second City, and they are telling a true story of their different points of view of what to do with all the stuff. So do you know, when you get to a certain age, your parents are downsizing or they pass on, and suddenly you're stuck with all of their stuff, or you have your own stuff, like a memento from a relationship or a memento from an event or something like that. And so it basically is like, what the heck do we do with all this stuff? And it also explores of like not just the physical stuff, but the stuff that we have in our hearts after, coming in contact with people and everything. So it's a play that makes you laugh. Oh my gosh, I laughed so hard. So I did end up seeing it, like a version of it, and you laugh and laugh and laugh. But then there's also times when you're sort of like holding back tears, or literally like just weeping, because it's reminding us of what's important to hang on to.
It's a play that for me very much strikes a chord. My wife will contest. I'm a pack rat. I'm sure she'd be more than happy to see me get rid of my CDs that are being buried in. I'm hoping you see it. What do you hope audiences are going to take away from it?
One of the reviews says this is what theater should be, and I kind of agree. I think that when you come, there's a slightly sort of interactive element, but it's very safe for the audience. People shouldn't freak out about the fact. But like, there's just times when Naomi or Matt are going to talk to the audience and sort of ask certain questions, but it's totally safe, and no one should worry about that. But I think what you're going to experience is really being together in this space, honoring and remembering things or people that are important to us. And sort of when you leave the space, you're going to be like, oh yeah, like I either do or don't have to hang on to that stuff. And it really is sort of a transformative piece of theater. And it's just done so beautifully, gently, with so much laughter and sort of joy, but very carefully and, as I say, gently done.
Lovely. Okay, so that's Big Stuff, and that runs from January 21st through to February 1st, 2026. Next, you have The Undeniable Accusations of Red Cadmium Light. That starts on February 25th of 2026. This is the only world premiere of the season. For you as artistic director, what made it the right choice for PTE's stage? And how long have you been aware of the playwright, Drew Hayden Taylor?
Okay, so Drew Hayden Taylor is a very important Canadian playwright. He's also a journalist and a filmmaker. He just is, I don't know, he just does so many things, and he does them all well. So I've been aware of Drew's work as a writer probably for decades, and also as a journalist as well. And he writes a lot about Indigenous issues from his point of view. There's often a lot of sort of cheekiness or comedy along with his writing, but also very pointed. And anyways, I'm a huge fan of his work. I read a few of his plays in preparation for the job interview, like, again, putting together that sort of proposed season. And then within a few days of me starting the job, I got an email from Drew, and I'm like, who's this Drew guy writing to me? And then I was like, read the full name, and it was Drew Hayden Taylor. And I was like, oh my gosh, Drew Hayden Taylor is writing to me. So anyways, so we had this fantastic Zoom meeting, and he sort of described a few new scripts that he's been writing and sent them to me immediately. And to be honest, I put them aside because it's just so busy when you start this job. I put them aside for a little while, and we were pursuing another script of his for a little while. And then I pulled them out, these new scripts, and I thought, oh, okay, wait a minute. This particular play is the right one for the season. It is so topical. So it tells the story of this gallery owner on Otter Lake First Nation, and she specializes in the counterfeit art scandals that were happening in terms of particularly Norval Morisseau's artwork, as well as other Indigenous artists. So their artwork was being counterfeited, and people were making money off of it, and it's just a horrifying situation. So she's a specialist in that area of the art world, and her daughter is this very prominent Indigenous educator. There's a journalist who comes to interview the gallery owner, and throughout sort of the process of this article being written, something is revealed that jeopardizes the two women's relationship and their careers, and it's kind of a page turner. You're really sort of following this really intense situation. It's so clear, the story, like you're sort of on the edge of your seat as you're watching what's going on between the three of them. So yeah, so when I read that, I thought, okay, no brainer. This is a great play, and yes, it's a premiere. It's in great shape to be able to offer next season, and so we're going to be doing it, and I'm very excited by it.
Yeah. So you talked about the art and the counterfeit. Like, can you compare it to any other topics today, like as far as relevancy?
Well, I mean, even in our own community, apparently the Winnipeg Art Gallery had one of these paintings that was a Norval Morisseau that was on display for a number of years. And when it was revealed that there were a number of his works that had been counterfeited, they discovered that this was one, and so they immediately removed it, of course. But it's quite an intriguing kind of situation, because you have people who have willingly paid money thinking that they're getting an authentic painting, and then there's people who are profiting from this fraud. So there's lots of themes and things going on there in terms of identity and representation and intrigue. So yeah.
Fantastic. So that is The Undeniable Accusations of Red Cadmium, and that's running from February 25th through to March 8th of 2026. Rounding out the PTE season, you're presenting Tiny Beautiful Things that starts on April the 8th. This play is based on an advice column. I envision a show with a lot of really unique characters. Is that the case? And how does it translate in a compelling theatrical experience?
Yeah, so this is a play I've had in my back pocket for just wanting to pitch it and present it for years, and I'm finally in a position where we can have it produced. So it's based on a book by Cheryl Strayed, which was one of Oprah's bestsellers, but the adaptation is done by Winnipeg's Nia Vardalos, who people will probably recognize from My Big Fat Greek Wedding and many other Hollywood productions. So Nia took the book and basically made a theatrical presentation of the book. So FYI, there is also a TV series called Tiny Beautiful Things, which is more autobiographical about the writer. This is literally the writer on stage answering letters. And like you say, there are dozens of letters. There's a total of 3 letter writers, and then there's a character who is the advice columnist. And each of those 3 letter writers play multiple ages, genders, stories, backgrounds, big struggles, little struggles, everything from a kid in grade 8 to, a grandfather who's lost their child or their son and everything. So it's quite a series of letters, basically. But what is incredible about the play is the compassion and empathy with which the character of the advice columnist, her name is Sugar, answers people. So this is why I love this play so much, especially right now, is that I feel that what we do need nowadays is an ability to put ourselves in someone else's point of view, understand what their struggles are, and meet them with compassion and empathy.
Right.
It's a beautiful play. Again, within the first page, I was laughing out loud, and within the second page, I had tears streaming down my cheeks. And I think it's because watching such empathy is actually incredibly moving. Like when you see generosity and when you see understanding and just honestly meeting people where they are at, you see that happen on stage in front of you. Also through the play, we also see the character of Sugar, the advice columnist, sort of understand her own life, because she also made some bad decisions and has some, some things in her past that she has to reconcile as well. So again, just going back to it being adapted by Nia Vardalos, people should not expect My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yeah.
It's not sort of a rip-roaring comedy. It's a drama, and there's some content because, of course, you've got people with different struggles that they're dealing with. But the ultimate journey is one of such empathy and beauty and sort of light that ends up coming through by the end.
And you're directing this one. Have you thought about how that's going to play out on stage?
I haven't started the design process yet, obviously. And the original production, which Nia actually starred in New York, the original production set it, very like realistically in her actual house. Like she receives the email inviting her to be this advice columnist, and then the letter writers sort of appear in her house and she's answering them. But I've also seen pictures of more abstract set designs and things. So I'm still sort of sitting on the fence. I don't know. I'll start the design process in a few months and figure out what we're going to do with it. But nevertheless, I do know that like the performances are really what are going to make this piece. It's had over 20 productions in the United States, and I know during the pandemic, like I saw performances that were outdoors on picnic tables. Like they obviously did them during the pandemic when you had to be outdoors. And so I feel like it's the acting and the letters and the empathy that is going to be the impact. But obviously, we're at Prairie Theatre Exchange. We're going to make sure it's also visually very beautiful to look at.
Fantastic. And this has been so great to have you here to talk about the 2025-26 PTE season. For you as artistic director, what are you most excited about regarding kicking off your first season of your own choice of plays?
Well, I'm just excited. I don't know. Again, I feel like with a long history of PTE, I feel like I do know this company fairly intimately. I'm new to the job, but I feel like I know the company fairly intimately. And I feel like this is a great PTE season.
Yeah. It sounds like it.
I feel like these stories are stories that people will, when they come to the theater, they'll be like, oh yeah, this is why I love going to live theater. And the experience of watching Prairie Theatre Exchange is unique because we have that beautiful 3-sided stage. So you're also experiencing something together. You can't really forget that you're with other people. Like you see each other when you're watching the stage. And so when there's liars at a funeral and everyone's laughing, you're going to be laughing too because you see that person in the front row just like killing themselves. And then if you see someone wiping a tear, you'll also sort of have that empathy of like, yeah, I find this moving too. Or maybe I don't, but I now understand that you do. So it's that quality of PTE that I love. And I feel like every single one of the plays we've chosen in particular are suited to that stage.
Yeah, and very diverse too.
Yeah.
Like there's every play is different from the one prior.
Exactly.
Quick, fast, I'm going to wrap up the conversation by asking if you could describe the season in 3 words, what would it be?
Stories shared together.
Fantastic. And this has been wonderful having you here. I am super excited for this season. I'm looking forward to being in the audience to see these really fun, thoughtful, and engaging plays. Congratulations on what looks to be an outstanding 2025-26 season. And thanks for taking the time to stop by and talk to me today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.